I am rooting for Gen Z for so many reasons that I want to see your generation be the next greatest generation, because we all want the next generation to have better. And when I look at everything that I've experienced through my lifetime, when I look at everything that my parents and grandparents experienced, and then I go back to the analogy of it's not hard for me to find gratitude, because I realized that not too many generations ago, you weren't able to shit and literally move the shit away from you. Yeah. Like there were generations that were literally having to live with no plumbing, no electricity, no air conditioning. So when I look at your generation, I'm like, you truly have the best of the combination of what all generations have brought to the table. Now, that said, do you have challenges of your day that you're going to have to face and sort with and deal with and try and solve? Absolutely. I'm not trying to say that we've just delivered you this perfect product of a world and life on a silver platter. Like we have problems that we have to deal with, but it's like I'm looking at your generation going, oh my God, you think about all of the huge access to information. And I mean, information is only power if you do something with it. Yeah. But you have such a massive access to information. You have access to entrepreneurial stories and historical data at the ease of your fingertips, that I feel like there does need to be tough love of saying, you know what, that's that old suck it up, buttercup. Like you have so many tools at your fingertips. Get busy and put your head down and stop looking for the hack or the shortcut and do the work. But then we get back into the part of this generation is with access to all this technology, what has been lost in all of that is delayed gratification. Everybody wants gratification now. And success over a long time takes a long time. Yeah. And since everybody wants that gratification now, I'm like, I don't think that you get that even if you find a get-rich-quick scheme and you score $100,000, that only gets you 1 year down the road. Success is literally building recurring revenue. It's building millions of dollars, and you don't do that overnight. It is an extreme amount of effort over an extended period of time. That delayed gratification is still very much the hard truth that I know this, and I can look back and remember when I was your age and remember that I thought I knew and my dad didn't know. But now I have grown up and realized there are some very long-held truths that are going to forever be true. So when I get people popping off at me trying to tell me I'm a baby boomer and I'm like, I am a proud Gen Xer, but the point is that I don't know that it's a new day. I'm like, you're going to find out. It's not a new day in a lot of ways because the long-held principles of success and of personal development have held for a long time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so and we're back with another episode of the Julius Files, and this is an entrepreneurial chronicle of sorts, and I say of sorts. We'll get to that, but I want to introduce Seth Sorrell to everybody, and online he is known as Seth the Mountain. Seth, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
Oh, well, it's been not only a crazy day, but it's been a crazy week. One of my companies, I feel like I'm going to end up doing a case study on game time decision making. I happened to get notice within a 24-hour period that one of the buildings that we were in that looks like a perfectly good building is being condemned, but that is part of entrepreneurship, and the problems just keep coming. But brother, so like I said, that's and to be clear, I mean obviously I am a Gen X. I got Matt in here, and Matt is a millennial, and Seth is Gen Z, and part of this conversation will veer into that piece of it. But man, tell us a little bit about yourself, background, and what you're up to.
Well, I am a absolute renaissance man. I am a part-time machinist, full-time college student. I have one poetry book already released, From the Mountain, which came out in September. I've got a new one on the way, which is The Vicious Rose, which comes out March 20th. And I've done YouTube content creation on and off over the years, and I like to invest myself in developing my mind and developing new opportunities in different career paths. So, yes.
And I think I want to go ahead, and I didn't know where this is coming in, but I want to get this out of the way, because you have displayed one of the first characteristics for checking the box as to entrepreneurship, curiosity. Entrepreneurs are very curious individuals. When Seth reached out to me, they had done an event inside of one of my operations, and he presented this as a coming on to talk about entrepreneurship, but Seth has created quite a bit of poetry. And I questioned whether that was entrepreneurial. And I still told him that because I have a certain interest in bridging that generational divide, that gap, that I still very much wanted to do the podcast. And then it took me about 24 hours later that I was watching another podcast, and they referred to podcasters being entrepreneurs. And then it started clicking with me because I always saw poetry, as arts, and there's arts are very valid and needed inside of our culture. But if a podcaster is an entrepreneur, meaning you are verbally creating content in a video format and putting it out on the internet, if that makes you an entrepreneur, well, then somebody creating content on paper and putting it out in book form still very much makes you an entrepreneur. The definition of entrepreneur is different in Google, and I think that there are different, let's just say, varying degrees of entrepreneurship, because I have always known entrepreneurship to be about, one, for profit, like you are pursuing a profit. Two, you are taking on an extreme amount of risk that the average person doesn't take on in pursuit of that profit. And three, you're actually trying to scale a business itself. But in the day and age of the creator and the attention economy, entrepreneurship has been, let's just say, expanded upon. So by no means do I want to slight anybody. I was just, I guess in all respects, I was splitting hairs, because I see poetry as part of the arts in the culture, and then you get into that starving artist situation. But I don't want to take it away from anybody, because if you view what you are doing as entrepreneurial, by all means, I'll always tell you that cautionary tale, but I want to encourage that journey itself. So when it comes to how you found your way into the passion of poetry, which then did lead into the entrepreneurial side of publication and actually putting your product out into the world, how'd you get started with that?
So, I've always been a writer. My mother, she raised me when I was 3 or 4, and she was showing me how to go on the computer and type up letters to fictional characters I used to watch. And she taught me how to read and write when I was 3. She was very intelligent, and I've always loved literature. And when I was younger, I used to write short stories and film scripts to movies I never made. And I stopped right around the end of elementary school, middle school. Then 2020 happened and the COVID lockdown ensued. And in a way for me to cope, I picked writing back up. And I started out doing short stories again. But then I started to experiment with poetry. My very first poem was actually about my father and his time at a Bible college. And it was very rough. It was very first draft, and I kept doing the poetry, and over 3 years I amassed a collection of poems that I wrote. And actually in 2022 I was a state finalist at the Indiana Poetry Ourselves competition, which is where high school poets can compete with their poetry. I didn't place high enough to go on to nationals, but I was a finalist. And so I decided in 2023 I was inspired by a fellow poet and friend of mine. Her name was Caitlin Saul. She's actually on Amazon. And she had put her first poetry compilation for everyone to see on KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. So she self-published. I'm like, I can do the same thing. I thought I've got a lot of writing, and our writing club teacher, Mrs. Pritchard, she encouraged me, and so I just made a manuscript and I got it released in September of last year. It's called From the Mountain, and I was able to connect with a lot of fellow writers in the community, and so that's kind of how I got started in it.
So, I mean, briefly, touch on the process of self-publication, because that is part of what the advancements of the internet and technology have brought to the forefront. That let's just say previous generations did not have the ease of use when it came to self-publication itself.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that process? What has that looked like for you?
So, I used Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, which is a service offered by Amazon for authors to release their books to mass market on Amazon. And it was a very interesting experience. And it was a very rewarding experience. And from an economic side of things, I get a lot of reward. I mean, so I get a pretty high royalty rate. So for paperback, I usually get 60% royalties. And for Kindle, I get about 70%. So any sales I make, I get a good cut of the royalties. Which, if you were under a publisher, you would not get as much royalties. Now, I will say self-publishing was great because it was fairly simple. I just had to upload my manuscript and like search engine SEO optimization stuff and all that. But the one thing about self-publishing, especially through KDP or other internet sources, is that while you do get a bigger cut of any royalties you make, you also have to cover so much more cost that if you were under a publishing house, you wouldn't have to cover that cost. For example, ISBN numbers, which are book identification numbers that every book has, every published book that is on sale has. If I had a publisher, they would pay for my ISBN. They would pay for that and get it set up, right? But as a self-publishing author, I have to get my own ISBN. Now, if you do KDP, Amazon will give you a ISBN for your book for free. The catch is that it's only applicable to Amazon. So if you wanted to take it to brick and mortar stores, or you wanted to take it to other ebook distributors, you really couldn't, because they'd say, oh, that's an Amazon ISBN. We don't want any part of that. And if you wanted to get your own ISBN, it's well over $100 just for one. So it's the self-publishing thing. It's very rewarding in some regards, and you get a lot of creative freedom. So you don't have a publishing house telling you how you should write this or how you should write that. You have a lot more control, but a lot of that cost, you have to pay so much more for yourself. Whereas if you had a publisher, they would cover all of it, or most of your needs for your book. So, yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, that's candidly, I am in the middle of writing my book. And so I started talking to my business coach. He didn't have a lot of good to say about publishers. He has written several books himself. And when he went down the publishing route, he actually ended up buying the book back from the publisher because he didn't feel like the publisher literally brought a lot of value to the table. So in this day and age, he is a big proponent of self-publishing. Mine is that I'm pouring my heart out. I'm trying to put all of my 20 years worth of entrepreneurial lessons into this book. So it's like it's a message that's meant to deliver, and I want to make sure that it is actually delivered, that I'm not just putting it out there into the ether for the sake of actually putting it out there. So I am still weighing that. Should I be dealing with self-publishing, or should I be trying to utilize the expertise?
Personally, I would say, Jason, for you or any of your audience who may be considering self-publishing, if you're writing something like this, like that's about entrepreneurial skills and your experience and what you've learned, you definitely want to have a lot of creative freedom on what you say and how you say it. Whereas if you had a publisher, that would be extremely limited. So I think for something like that, self-publishing would be great because really, you're the boss of how you write and what you write about. Whereas if you had a publisher, they could be a bit more of an obstacle on how you express yourself and in your wisdom.
Interesting. I don't know how my style would be received.
Yeah,
I'm sitting there. That's okay. So I guess one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to bring Seth on here is because in the midst of my entrepreneurial journey, I'm finding myself working with lots of different generations. And then I don't want to say make matters worse, but what I'm trying to get at is that I have found myself buying into the being frustrated and allowing myself to label it as a generational issue. When I really get real and rational about it, it's no, these issues that I'm frustrated about, these types of personalities exist in all generations, and I don't think that it's fair to put that rap on a generation. And I think that it further divides, and I'm more of wanting to bridge that divide. So I guess from your perspective, Seth, where do you see the divides themselves between the generations? And I mean, do you see an actual a filling of the gap, or is it a divide? Is it a divide that can't be bridged?
Well, I believe that there definitely is a generational divide. And like you said, a lot of the personalities that are associated with one generation or another, they exist in all generations. But I do believe that the circumstances Gen Z has had to deal with, and as well, Gen Alpha, the one after us, and the ones after them, they're going to be very unique in a period of human history that I think human history hasn't seen before. Going back to what you said earlier, since we were little, we've grown up with this abundance of knowledge at our fingertips. And while on paper, it could be beneficial, I think in practice it hasn't done a whole lot. And so I do believe there's a generational divide because I think what we experience technologically and the cultural norms that we've experienced it's really kind of either it's unforeseen in human history, or it's unforeseen in the circumstances that it's happened. And so that has led to generations like the boomers and Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z to each have their own unique perspective on the current day, because we've each had to grow up in our own unique circumstances that haven't really been seen before.
And I'm not going to, will not disagree with any of that. The problem, I say the problem, and I think it really comes down to whether you're a conspiracy theorist or not, is that we are moved in directions by our leadership, and then you have intended and unintended consequences of all of that. So I was at International Franchise Association convention, and I had an opportunity to literally take a course on generations. Knowing that this podcast was coming up, and being in the middle of becoming certified as a certified franchise executive, I hopped on to take it. And I took quite a few notes as to the differences between the generations, but I discovered I don't know, somebody could argue intended. I believe an unintended consequence in the way America has evolved through all of this. And what I'm getting at is that I'm a very loyal person. It is like a foundational thing for me, but it's also married to high character. When they started talking about the baby boomers, what they had listed was that the baby boomers were hardworking, loyal. Stability was important to them. Being a team player, following the rules, the hippie generation, the face-to-face communication, the values of jobs themselves. And then when they started, the message that they were saying on that, where it was coming to the problem, is because they hopped over Gen X and went directly to the millennials and the Gen Z. And they said, the reason millennials and Gen Z are struggling so hard with what the boomers and what Gen X is saying about how the real world and life is that those generations watched corporate America shit on that generation, that the boomers gave that loyalty to the corporations, to the companies, and invested their life in it. And so you've got these younger generations looking at it, and it was like a major light bulb in my own head, because I still believe the principles hold true.
Yeah.
And I still believe, like, you can say what you want, but Microsoft still took care of all of the people involved in Microsoft. But corporate America as a whole, whether fairly or not, in a lot of ways, they did shit on the people that literally gave them loyalty. And that has been but some of it, though, is our own government, that they want to straddle both sides of that fence, because it's our government that brought on globalization. And it's globalization that caused these corporations to make moves that looks like they turned their back on the people that gave them that loyalty.
Yeah.
And that's where we get into the intended and unintended consequences. And I know of no politician that is ever going to own their part of that.
Yeah. Well, and
Not yet, anyway.
To touch on what you said about the corporations just taking a huge dump on the people that were aligned to them. I mean, my father was a union UAW member. He worked at Chrysler for a long time. My grandpa was a union member, and he still pays his dues. And now they were both. Now my grandpa was a little more of a older boomer than my dad was, but the thing is that they both saw a lot of that globalization, where foreign car companies were getting involved with Chrysler, and they were making some deals that hurt American factory workers. And I can speak as a Gen Z member that a lot of my generation have a lot of suspicion and antagonism towards corporate America. And that has led some members of the older generation, Gen X, Boomer, to see us as, socialistic or communistic or whatever. But having talked to members of my circle that are left and right, I think, especially with my leftist friends, it's not that they're communistic or truly socialistic, it's that they don't want to see the corporations run roughshod over American workers, and not be penalized. Because, again, Gen X and then boomers before them went through these globalization changes that hurt the economy and hurt their stability. So we don't want that happening to us. And we want to do everything in our power to prevent that. And so that has led to some tension because some of the older generations see us as far left, but really we just don't want to be hurt as they were hurt.
And I mean, because the funny thing is, there's an old saying that you're not normal if you don't start off growing up on the left. But you're also not normal if as you get to my age that you don't find that pendulum swinging and you find yourself becoming more conservative.
Yeah.
And I see that because, and again, I'm using the word naive, but I'm not trying to be insulting. Naive is not having the age, experience, and wisdom to have a fuller picture. And if there's something that I have been trying to scream to this younger generation, it's you're not going to be the same person in 20 years that you are today. You're going to actually experience pain and some hard knocks of life, and it's going to change you as an individual. So quit putting out there that you know everything, because you don't know shit. And I'm saying this from a person of experience where I thought that I knew everything at your age. And eventually I had to look at my father and apologize to him to say, Dad, you were right. I didn't know shit. It's the bad thing is, in this age of social media, I get frustrated when I hear the woe is me narrative, and then I see people validating it, because it is the combination of that dopamine hit that you are getting when you get that validation. Dopamine's one of the strongest drugs in your brain. So it literally encourages you to reinforce a very negative, shitty mindset that is going to eventually walk you down a path of disappointment, or you're going to build 1 million followers and all of you are literally on the wrong side of living a very productive life, because you're in that victim entitlement, woe is me mindset that I just do not think serves anybody well over an extended amount of time. Because there is still very much about being a man and protecting and providing and operating in an unfair world that we've all had to operate in.
Yeah. And I can see what you mean about the woe is me mentality. Now, I will say there are a seriously large amount of mental health issues going on with Gen Z and the millennial generation that are serious and are causing a lot of struggle. However, to go to what you're saying, I feel like there's not enough promotion to my generation or members of my generation to another, promoting any serious fulfillment or proper treatment. So what happens is you have a lot of my generation who've had to not just see world events, but there's of course the technology, which we've had all this social media and the internet since we were little kids, and it's caused us a lot of harm, because I don't feel like any human child evolution, when it comes to evolution of humanity, no human child is ready for that amount of information to be ready for them at the tip of their finger. And so we haven't really, we're kind of the test generation. Because we've experienced it since we were little kids, and it's had a lot of harm. It's caused mental health struggles. But there's just not enough being done to promote healthy living or healthy methods to cope. And, I've experienced some serious troubles. I was an orphan by the time I was 10 years old. I'd seen some horrible things. But what helped me as a Gen Z kid who, again, was very much so exposed to technology is that I had people, family, and mentors leading me to healthy ways to cope. And sadly, there's a lot of members of Gen Z who either have not had access to those mentors to give them healthy coping mechanisms or healthy ways to live to deal with that pain, or worse is that they reject that healthy method of living or coping because it makes them uncomfortable. And so since it makes them uncomfortable, they're just like, oh, I'll be fine. And they keep living in this victimhood mentality, and it leads them to ruin.
And I mean, there's so much to unpack out of that because everybody that comes to work for me, I feel like they're coming and they're giving a piece of themselves. Thereby, I feel like it's my responsibility to respond in kind. So I have felt the need to, in a manner, mentor and coach this younger generation. And when I'm able to have that direct one-on-one communication, I think that generally I'm successful because I have had a lot of people over the years that have come back to me and thanked me for my perspective or their time working with me because I'm able to help them get over the hump on that. And at the same time, I almost get mad at their parents and, as a consequence, mad at my generation because I shouldn't have to be that person. I'm happy to be that person when you're giving a piece of yourself to my business, but I shouldn't have to be that person. Those kids should have gotten that from their parents, and for whatever reason, they move towards coddling. And I'm not sitting here trying to advocate for creating artificial suffering, but there is a certain something that comes out of suffering and pain and delayed gratification and the perspective that comes with that. And your generation, and by Matt's generation, and maybe a piece of my generation, you guys have been allowed to be medicated for all of your problems. Anytime there's a problem, it's, oh, we got a pill for that. And I go to a perfect, for instance. Anxiety is my friend. Anxiety, when I'm feeling that, it tells me where I need to be focusing my attention. I would never let a doctor prescribe me a pill to suppress my anxiety. And I think that it is a place where we have went wrong in this country that, yes, as a man, as a human, but specifically as a man, you should learn to receive your feelings. You should learn to get control of your feelings. But you shouldn't be so quick to turn them off, because that anxiety has over my 20-year entrepreneurial career has told me where I need to be focusing my attention, where I need to be spending my time. And at the same time, it also adds, every time I experience anxiety and I'm dealing with a problem, I add another layer to my thick skin. So every time I work through a problem and get to the other side, I have that much less anxiety because I'm learning to cope with it. I'm learning to manage it, and I'm finding a way to actually make it a positive attribute. Perfect for instance, CBD oil. I had some friends ask me to try CBD oil because for me, I was looking for it because I've always battled insomnia. It truly solved my insomnia. If I dosed that CBD oil at the end of the night, my sleeping improved. But if I dosed that CBD oil at the beginning of the day, Matt can attest, I became a different person. Like, I could have literally watched the business burn down in front of me, and I would have just sat there straight-faced and taken no action. And that's what made me realize there is a lot of positive to anxiety if you can manage it. And you do not manage it with pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals clouds your brain, puts it up in this. That's not an effective way to manage your anxiety. It does not teach you tools and mental fortitudes that you are able to apply to the rest of your life. And it's another version of quick fixes that has been given to your generation that, whether intended or unintended, it is absolutely counterproductive. It is not doing you any favors at all.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this as someone, I take an antidepressant, so I am sort of on the pharmaceutical thing. But I say for some, like, for what you said, as a man, I feel like you need to have some level of anxiety. And I think, women too need that. Like, everyone needs that level of being on the edge. Now, you don't want to be having panic attacks every day. But you got to be able to have that edge. Because I think anxiety does give you an edge where you're always looking. You're always aware of the life events, what's going on. And so if you don't have that to some degree or a healthy amount, then, like you said, you'll just be completely dozed off. And, like, everything could be falling apart in your life, and you're just going to be like, it's fine. Like that meme of that dog in the house, and it's burning down around him. He's like, this is okay. It's like, no, you don't want to be like that. You want to have that edge.
Well, and I mean, I want to take this one step further now that we're actually going down this track and where I'm starting to think about it. Because the boomers participated in this. I just don't know how complicit they were in what they were dealing with. What the food industry and what the pharmaceutical industry and what the powers that be and the money out there, that it is about control. It is about making you sheep. And this was intended plan of action that was put on track 50, 60, 70 years ago. Because there was a day and age that we were eating a lot cleaner.
Yes.
And all of the pharmaceuticals weren't needed. So in the process of all of the processed foods that have led to needing all of the pharmaceutical remedies, and all it is doing is keeping you controlled. And I am a big proponent that you should be responsible for your own health. And I mean literally garbage in, garbage out. If you buy into what America tells you and you eat nothing but processed foods, it's just all garbage. You are not able to truly take control of your health because you are so willing to turn your health over to doctors. And I'm the first to say that, like, if you are a good doctor hearing this, no disrespect. The vast majority of doctors don't know shit, and the most of them don't even know that they don't know shit. So most of them don't care to go out and truly get educated. No doctor is required to take not even one semester on nutrition in order to get their degree. And if you don't understand nutrition, you cannot understand what you're eating in food.
Sorry, it was freezing up on my end.
Yep.
But what you're saying about the food, that's completely true. Because I feel like there's so much more awful chemicals in a lot of the foods that we have access to. And I want to shout out my nutrition wellness teacher in high school for going over this with us. Because she actually showed us, like, if you look at a lot of, like, the processed foods that you can see at the supermarket, gas stations, all that, take a look at the ingredients list, and it's a lot of, like, the primary ingredients are a lot of chemicals that you can't even pronounce. And it's having a very dangerous effect. And I think it has made us, in some regards, whether intentional or not, it has led to, I think, so many more people just being docile and completely unambitious, and they don't have as much of a drive.
No, I mean, more to the point. Yeah, no, and more to the point, you're literally watching testosterone plummet in men across the world in real time.
Yes.
And I don't think, and that's where I said, that's where it comes back to the powers that be and the control that they want to have. So I don't think that what they've done is unintended. I think that the major powers that be want us on that hamster wheel, working our jobs, barely surviving, to pay our taxes, to have faith in money that is not backed by anything. It's totally based on faith. They don't even want you to understand that concept. Just keep working. Just keep consuming the garbage. Just keep listening to your doctor. Just keep paying your taxes so that we can continue to have higher levels of control. And it is one of the most major shifts that I have seen out of today's entrepreneur. The biggest message that I see coming out of today's major entrepreneurs is they are preaching health. They are encouraging people to take control of your health mentally and physically, that they are encouraging a higher level of awareness and literally going after a positive mindset. Never before have I seen, generally when you think about muscle heads or people that are really in shape, you're just looking at people that are bodybuilders and they spend all of their time going to the gym. The majority of the big entrepreneurs that I have respect for, 25% of their message is all based on personal health and investing in yourself.
Yes.
And how, and then you've got people like Andy Frisella to say, personal health is the ultimate rebellion against what they are trying to do to all of us as a civilization. And I hope that your generation is receiving that message, because that's where you're going to find your autonomy. That's where you're actually going to start breaking away from those chains. But it does mean that mentally you have got to break out of that victim mentality. You have got to break away from that woe is me, you owe me, and move drastically to the other side to say, I am accountable. I am at fault for everything. And even when you say, but wait a minute, I'm not at fault. But what good does it do to blame it on somebody else? It does not move you any further down the road. So everything swings in a pendulum. And I'm like, I understand COVID really swung a pendulum one way, but the only way that we're actually going to get civilization to truly take the bull by the horns is to swing the other direction and start getting people that want to take personal responsibility and accountability for their own lives, and stop looking for the person to blame. And by extension, and me and Matt have had this conversation, and stop blaming capitalism, because raw capitalism, I truly believe, is the heart of the prosperity of this world. It's the crony capitalism. It's the capitalism tied to governments that's the problem. But when you look at the increased levels of the quality of life, the amount of people in the world that have been pulled out of poverty. Capitalism is what's responsible for that, and people are missing the beauty of the essence of capitalism. It ain't no different than my union background. Unions were about health and safety, and somehow they got twisted to where that message was lost about what the base of a union is supposed to be for. Yeah. Go ahead, Matt. You were about ready to say
that's
something.
That's where you run into those intended and unintended consequences. Because as capitalism got bigger and bigger and things got better and better, and then you had the women enter the workforce, is where you see the women employment goes up, and then childhood obesity also goes up. And it's like, well, why? It's like, oh, well, they're not home cooking those actual fresh meals, taking care of a garden. It turned into hitting the fast food and, getting all those processed foods. It starts that whole cycle. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies all have a vested interest in all of the garbage food that we eat, whether if it's through Kellogg's or Taco Bell. And it's like, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
The thing I would like to add to this discussion about like the healthy capitalism and the crony capitalism is I see it on this level of capitalism, free market, free enterprise capitalism. That's what lifts so many people to a point of prosperity and success and peace and accomplishment in life. And I wholeheartedly support that. I guess the problem I have with our society and our economy and how our government runs is we've lost touch with that free market capitalism. I would actually argue we're more closer to a corporatist economy and system than capitalist. I see it this way, whereas, communism is socialism taken to the extreme. I see corporatism as capitalism taken to the extreme, where now the corporations that came up from the capitalist background have now dominated their markets and are influencing government officials left, right, center, and are making policies to protect them while, Jason, you're a local businessman and other business people who are starting from the ground up, they have a hard time rising to the occasion because the corporations that already got their power, that already got their money, they're choking out the people that are starting up. And the government is not doing enough to prevent that. That's why, like, Roosevelt and Taft are some of my personal heroes, because they fought that corporatism that was taking over the United States in that time. And
they seen where it was going to go.
Yeah. And I feel like we're now kind of at a point where we were in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, where corporations, like back then it was Standard Oil and Carnegie and all them, and now it's Disney, it's
Rock.
Stellantis and all these others that now they dominate the market and they're choking out any startups. And so that is one thing that my generation, again, going back to what we talked about earlier with the generational divide, not only is it that we saw the older generations get screwed over by the corporations that were going globalist, but the corporations were screwing over the ones that came before my generation when they just try to start up their own life and their own business, and they got choked out because the ones that already made their money shut them down because they were competition. So we've really moved far from capitalism. And I think if you talk to a lot of people in my generation who claim to be socialist, they don't really have a problem with capitalism. And I've talked to some friends of mine that say they're socialists, and I've really talked them through it. I'm like, you don't really have a problem with capitalism. You have a problem with corporatism, which a lot of us, left and right center, we all have a problem with that. And I see so many, socialists, they claim that pure socialism or maybe even communism is the answer, but I know for a fact if they got total socialism or total communism, they would not like it because they reap the benefits of capitalism. They are getting screwed over by corporatism, but they're reaping the benefits of capitalism, true free market capitalism. And when that's taken away from them, they're not going to be happy, and they're going to realize, oh, I was fighting the wrong enemy the entire time.
No, you have made some good points of distinction, because in my vocabulary, corporatism has never entered my vocabulary as the distinction as to where the problem could come from. When you say it, I do feel the need to stress another piece. I'm going to stress this for those small business owners out there because I truly do want to champion small business.
Yes.
I don't believe that the corporations and big business should have the strength that they have. 50% of America is still small business. 50% of America is employed by small business. Why does small business not have the strength and the clout that they should? Because the business owners are fucking it up. And I'm saying that because one of the big reasons that I got to any level of success is because I had to accept some hard truths and I had to eat some shit sandwiches and I had to start making decisions like an actual business person. And that is one of the hardest humps for small business to get over. They don't want to raise their prices because they feel guilty because it's their customer base. They don't want to hold their employees accountable because they're like family. They don't want to take the time to write systems for their operation because you know what? That just shouldn't matter. People are intelligent. They know what they're supposed to do. No, that is not business. Business is built on systems. Systems produce a consistent result every single time. Humans are gravitated towards an expectation that when they come to spend their money, they want to know that that expectation is going to be met repeatedly. They don't want to pull in and be like, spin the wheel. What kind of product or service am I going to get today?
Exactly.
And corporatism is ruthless capitalism, and small business would be able to compete more effectively if, in a lot of ways, they would grow a set of balls and make the hard decisions that they need to make in order to be respected business people, or get out of the way. Because they're not doing themselves or anybody any favors if you're not willing to hold people accountable, if you're not willing to develop systems in business. You are, in fact, spinning your own wheels, and you're never going to make any money for all of the efforts. And you would be better off just going back and being an employee and conforming to somebody else's systems and being held accountable by somebody else. Because most people do not realize all of the ways the government stacks the deck against you in order to continue to stay in business. And my heart bleeds and goes out for all of these small businesses that the hard truth is they shouldn't be in business because they're not willing to do what's necessary to truly run a business worth actually operating. And that's that hard truth where I'm like, I had to learn it internally, and I had to just simply start making those hard decisions and start acting like a real business person. And so much of small business, it's a stretch too far. It's a hump they can't get over. And then big business is like, yep, just keep acting like that because then you're real easy prey for us. And that's that. I want to see that information come to the table, but generally, it can't just be laid at your feet. You got to be smacked with it in order for you to actually wake up and realize oh, there are rules to this game that I have to play by. I changed the game. I wanted to get into business, but there's still hard, fast rules to this game that you literally have to employ if you're going to be serious in the game and have the ability to fight against that big business corporatism that you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of the people in your generation have a hard time with, they don't want to be held accountable by a small business, but yet they'll go work for a big company and find out that accountability is, if you're not willing to come to work, you don't have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in all of this easy information dissemination, where is the answer? Because I watched a podcast with Simon Sinek, and he very clearly said, like, COVID really fucked up this generation.
Yes.
Like, there are years of problems that we're not going to readily solve because we literally had years worth of a pandemic that mentally people are going to have to work through. What is the right message? What is the right solution? Because the quicker we get through to your generation, the quicker that everybody puts on their britches and starts doing the work and we actually move to a better place.
Well, it starts by not using the word britches.
I don't. I mean, nobody wants to hear about my Levi 550s either. But
personally, I think the solution lies at, as we talked a little bit before, self-development. And I mean, for me personally, the crux of all the self-development I do lies at my faith in Christ. That's for me. And going back to your podcast, which was actually the first podcast I listened to, was the one you did a little while ago about your faith and the religion. And for me personally, I think having a spiritual life, and specifically a spiritual life with Christ, Jesus, has very much so helped me to have discipline that I need to do the work that I do. So I think what we need to promote to my generation and what my generation needs to promote to itself and to the ones after us is a world of self-development. And I mean healthy self-development. Because I can say this, that a lot of people in my generation, particularly a lot of young men, they go down these rabbit holes of self-development, but they get very toxic real quick. And they get sold these kind of quick fixes and these things that don't really help them in the long run. And I think we need to sell my generation, Gen Z, that if you want to change the world, if you want to do good work, you want to make your life better, you have to start doing little by little things to make yourself a more interesting person, a more grounded person. And I think the biggest thing, as someone who I've been on that road myself for a few years now, is it doesn't happen overnight. Like, I see these videos on YouTube or these posts on Instagram, they're like, disappear for 1 month and you'll be so much better. It's like, that's not how that works. It takes your whole life. It's a life journey. And that's why I kind of want to be a Renaissance man, is because it won't happen in my 20s. It won't happen in my 30s. It's going to happen over my entire life. And it's little things I do every day, which is very unappealing to my generation because it's not an easy solution. And it's kind of like what my grandpa calls the microwave generation, where you just get it in an instant. And it's like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I think if we need to if we want to bridge the gap of the generational divide, I think what needs to happen is boomers and Gen X need to continue to encourage like the millennials and Gen Z, Gen Alpha to pursue proper, healthy, disciplined self-development that'll take their entire life to accomplish, but it's better than just, going on Reddit and complaining about how awful your life is. And I feel like if the older generations can encourage that healthy self-development, and if members of my generation would get out of that woe is me mentality and listen, I feel like there would be so much more improvement in how our society runs, and we could still have the technology and the internet and all the things we have, but we would be better trained to know how to handle it, know how to use it.
And so, I mean, my message to that, my business coach, I mean, the man says a lot to me, but something that has resonated with me for a long time: be kind to your future self.
Yes.
And here is the crux of that statement. It's hard to be kind to your future self because it means discipline and personal development and taking actions today that are not what you today want to do, but you do them so that you know your future self will thank you. This was not a stretch for me because my father is in his early 70s and he has very low mobility. My mother, early 70s, again, very low mobility. A lot of that has to do with how they treated themselves in their 30s and 40s. So I have looked at that and been like, what I'm trying to get across to people is it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to be hard. If you give your life to doctors, you're going to eat garbage today, and the later years of your life are going to be incredibly hard because you're going to suffer in your later years of life. However, if you develop discipline today and you nourish your body and you take care of yourself mentally and physically, you are not going to have those struggles and pains and ailments later on in life. It is a choose your hard, because it's all hard. It's just a question of where do you want it to be hard. And I am a big proponent of literally owning and choosing my hard. I don't want to just laissez-faire. I'm going to just whatever today is, and then be dependent on a doctor later on to find out what pill are they going to subscribe me and what side effect is it going to have and how are they going to screw me up later on down the road. No, my hard is I'm going to choose the healthy foods that I'm going to eat today. I'm going to choose the actual way that I'm going to physically stress my muscles today, so that I know I'm not going to fall into that vicious cycle later on. And I do believe it comes back to that life is not fair. That's not a reason worth living it. Okay, so if life is not fair, that means whether you like it or not, life is going to present you with challenges. Well, then that would rationalize you will overcome those challenges if you go out of your way to challenge yourself purposely before those inevitable challenges do come to you. So challenging yourself, putting challenges in front of yourself is a great way to develop that discipline.
Yes.
And that discipline is a great way to build self-confidence to move forward and accomplish great things in life. But all of that is based on delayed gratification. And that is the crux with your generation, is that there's no appreciation for delayed gratification.
Yes. Yes. And for me, like, I have a hard time delaying gratification. I believe I will get to a point where it'll be easier. I believe I can do it, but it is a challenge because when so many of my generation want to promote, as you said, that laissez-faire mentality of I can do all the things, all the pleasurable things I want now. You know, I'm young. I can do whatever I want now. Whatever's pleasurable with no regard of if I should do it or not. It's kind of like what Dr. Ian Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum's character from Jurassic Park said, where it's like, you were so caught up thinking if you could, you never stopped to think if you should. And that's kind of my generation. We're more focused on, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want. I can do as much as I want. But you're not stopping to think, should I? Which doesn't lead you to be disciplined, which doesn't lead you to be more developed as a person, so that when those challenges come later in life, you're going to be socked in the face.
And the question is going to be, are you going to rise to those challenges, or are you going to walk into a clinic and get a pill?
Yeah, and I struggle with it, but I believe I know what's right, and I believe I can get there, and I hope to lead my generation to join me on that struggle so that we can all get there, get to a better place.
Well, and that is where we get into that. I understand what people are saying when they want to move towards socialism. I reject it, but I understand it. And the reason I say I understand it is because people by nature are tribal. At the end of the day, though, we are still individually responsible for ourselves. And we can only control ourselves. We want to be associated to a tribe. And I believe that the good human nature of people is you want to contribute to something and you are willing to help take care of other people. But as an individual, that is all you have control over. You only have control over your own thought process. You only have control over your own physical actions. So do well there. Stop looking towards the government and looking towards socialism, which is inevitably going to be a slanted individual with power saying, I think you should do this. And likelihood is they will be a politician that's never had to meet a payroll, and all they know how to do is make promises with somebody else's money. That's not going to serve our society well. And yeah, it is about all great nations get toppled, and I am afraid that we are watching our own nation get toppled due to bad decisions and people buying into the propaganda being put out there by government officials that we should all be looking at them and laughing, saying nobody takes you serious because you haven't accomplished anything other than getting elected to be a politician.
Yeah, I do have one point I want to make about the well, I want to make a point about the direction of our country right now. And it's something regarding, because we're in an election year. This is 2024. I have a feeling that with how divided our country is, and how just divisive everything is, how tense everything is domestically in our country, I feel like we're going to be facing another sort of 1860 election situation. So, you know, I don't know how much of you know much a lot, but I don't know if you've really studied what happened in the 1860 election. But that was the election. That was the election that led to Abraham Lincoln becoming president. In the 1860 election, there were four different nominees. The Democrat vote was split between a Northern Democrat and a Southern Democrat. Northern Democrat was Stephen Douglas, who famously debated Lincoln in Illinois. And then the Southern Democrat was, I forget the first name, but Breckinridge, I believe. And then there was I think like a constitutional unionist party, third party option, and then there was Lincoln for the Republicans. And the election was so chaotic, and it was so tense, and it was such a split vote that it really led to the southern states seceding, and that led to the Civil War. And I feel like what we're facing right now is we have Donald Trump. We presumably Donald Trump's going to be the nominee for the Republicans. Presumably Biden's going to be the nominee for the Democrats, although me personally, I have some questions as to what might happen there at the DNC convention. And there's also some new, pretty notable third-party candidates like RFK Jr. and Cornel West, I believe. So, and of course, I personally don't leave it off the table that you could see Nikki Haley running as a third-party candidate, and she might drop out of the Republican race, but she may run as third party. So you could end up having some serious problems for our election this year, because there'll be so many notable candidates, the vote could be split severely, and whoever is unlucky enough to win, that could cause a lot of civil unrest. And so I feel like I'm concerned for the future of our country, because I think what happens after this year will be very shocking, and there's going to be a lot of unrest, and it's very concerning because there's so much divisiveness right now.
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to opine on this topic. Matt and I do not have the same feelings. We don't have the same feelings because Matt just has a disdain for Donald Trump that I don't feel that. I think that Trump could have been a great president, but he was too bombastic, too willing to punch down, too willing to fight with any of them and all of them, when the reality is he had the ability to just completely disassociate with all of the arguing coming out of CNN and MSNBC, but he chose to engage. And because he engaged, all he did was fed into their narrative of, see, he's not presidential. I believe that had he acted more presidential and let his actions speak for themselves, that he really could have been a great president.
Yeah.
I still think... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I completely... And Matt, I completely understand your disdain for Trump. And I understand you don't want to talk too much about this. I get it. But one thing I will say is that I think Trump's policies, if you judge them on his policies, not all of his policies were good, but he did have some good policies. Trump's biggest flaw is his mouth. He likes the conflict. He likes to get in these battles where I feel like had he just simply kind of stood back, kept his mouth shut, and just kept working and doing what he was doing for the country, he wouldn't have been as much trouble if he just let his policies speak for themselves. But because there's a lot of things Trump did that some people don't give him enough credit for, but there's also things people have criticized him about that they rightfully should criticize him about. So yeah. No,
I completely agree, because in premise, I support Trump. the reason that I support Trump is because I'll make the clarification, much like I think I should be everybody's cup of tea, but opinions vary. The people that know me, that like me, that trust me, that respect me, they don't agree with everything that I say. They just know that I am a good individual, that I have a lot of heart, and that I'm willing to put forth a bunch of effort, and that I operate in high character. But they don't agree with everything. I look at Trump overall, and I do not want to try and hold him to a different standard that I would not hold any other human or any other American. And by and large, I think he is more positive than negative. But Seth, I completely agree with you. He has created his own problems, and he has created a narrative that didn't have to be. He truly could have went down as one of America's greatest presidents without all of the unnecessary arguing that he chose to engage in.
Yes.
I still do believe that in totality, it's Trump's ego and it's Trump's vanity that we are capable of being the beneficiaries of, because Trump wants legacy.
Yeah.
He wants his name in history.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that he doesn't want his name in history to be a bad name. He wants his name to be a great name. And his vehicle is being president of America and steering it out of a shitstorm to engrave his name in history in a good way. And I still think that he's capable of doing that. It's just, how is everything going to unfold? And as I have learned, politics, like I say, business is a blood sport, and business doesn't have, like, politics is a whole nother level of blood sport. So you are, the thing is I'm like,
business.
It is. And it's a question of what is going to happen over the next 6 months. I'm not going to be surprised by anything, because anything that you can conceive of is on the table. Like,
Yeah.
It amazes me the amount of lawsuits that they have brought after him and only because he was elected. I never thought that I would ever see that. So nothing is going to surprise me at this point. But I do care. I worry about and I care about what it's going to do to the country as a whole. Because part of what your generation is struggling with, your struggle of the day, you are at your beginning earning years, you're finding out what hyperinflation is.
Yes.
Your cost of living, that is your struggle of the day.
Yes.
And that has not been created by capitalism. That's been created by out of control government spending.
Yes. Yes. And you know, I've doing another history thing that's pertinent to this topic of the inflation. I don't know how much of you, Jason or Matt, or your audience has studied the Weimar German government, so the government that was in power between the Kaiser and Hitler. But if you go back and look at old pictures of the Weimar government in like the early 1920s, when they were suffering from the hyperinflation because they were printing endless money to try and pay off the reparations they owed Britain and France and the other Entente countries, it was so bad, it got to a point where you would see pictures of little kids on the street playing with big stacks of the German currency, the marks, and they were just playing with it in the street because it wasn't worth anything. It was just basically a toy for these kids to play around with in the street. That's how useless their currency was, because it was so inflated. And I feel like we're going to get to that point.
That's actually the time that my family fled and came
Yeah.
to the States. During
Oh, well, during the Weimar time period?
yeah, right at the very
Yeah.
beginning of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, but and again, I'm, you know what? It wouldn't even be fair for me to call myself a student of history. I mean, I'm fascinated by pieces of history, but what has happened to Venezuela over the last decade is a perfect, for instance, because Venezuela is one of the most natural resource rich countries in all of the world. But you literally got to carry around a frickin' trash bag like you're Santa delivering presents and say, will this be enough for a loaf of bread? And and that is, we're very quickly moving that direction. And then we get into this is where I come back to the Trump thing. I don't believe a politician solves this problem. I think a business person solves this problem.
Yeah.
And that's the
Trump's not a
distinction that I
politician.
make. No, I'm not, no, clearly not.
For better
And
or
that's where I
worse.
argue that
Yep.
that's where I argue he's not the right businessman to be the one doing it.
Yeah. And and I completely understand that, Matt. I completely understand. And yeah. And the going
Well,
back
the problem, no, Seth, the problem is what people have watched them do to Trump for trying to get into politics. You will get no other businessman that will be willing to risk their reputation and their wealth to get involved because of what they watched everybody do to Trump. Like, it has literally, you should be looking at Trump going, he's the only one that will do it because no respected businessman is going to be willing to put their reputation and their wealth on the line because of what they watch the politicians do.
And the thing is, like, look at Elon Musk. Elon Musk says some really zany things, and he's done some zany things. But I think he still has that businessman attitude that there's certain things he just will not do. And it's really rare to see Elon Musk not take a risk. Because that's how he's built his career, is taking crazy risks. But now Elon Musk may make his political comments. I don't see that man running for United States office. Certainly not the presidency, because I don't think he wants the same thing that happened to Trump happening to him. And Elon Musk...
He's not naturally born here.
No. Well, that's true. But, like, even look at Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
Bezos. Or Gates.
But they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't. Because they don't... I mean, even though their politics are certainly different than Trump, they would still get crucified. Because they're a businessman. Yeah. They would...
No, because I do want to clarify... I don't want Bezos running. I don't want his politics.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean. But, like, you know what? Yeah, the other businessmen, they're not taking the same risk Trump has. No way.
No. And I do have to, because I joked with Matt. This is what I thought was funny. Okay, one, these judges that are criminals themselves. The judgments that they're levying against him, it's criminal in itself. But Trump is basically, the ultimate fuck you is that he's like, no problem. I'll just put my name on something else and I will sell more of it and I'll pay your judgments. You're not going to get in my actual wealth. And in the midst of everything, I'm like, good for you for showing another judge trying to meddle in politics that ultimately capitalism is capable of kicking your ass. It does not matter what you try and do. A true capitalist, a true entrepreneur will find a way to overcome. And because that's the thing. Most people see and they think that Trump is a billionaire. That's great, but Trump does not have $1 billion. He just owns assets that are worth billions of dollars. So when they're trying to levy all of these hundreds of millions of dollars worth of penalties against him, if he did nothing, it truly could wipe him out. But it's that entrepreneurial mind of, hey, I got a brand. What is another way that I can capitalize on that brand? Because I need to raise some money to deal with these jackholes over here that have got just enough power to try and cost me money. I find that fascinating. I think it is, like I said, Trump should be a case study. Exactly what the title of the case study should be, that's still yet to be determined. I don't know. And I think, but he's definitely a case study.
Yes. And I think the pinnacle of Trump capitalizing on all these trials has just been the amount of money and resources he's gotten since the mugshot was made public. Once that mugshot was made public, whether or not you think Trump was guilty or that he did something wrong or not, regardless, you cannot argue the fact that was they were handing Trump marketing power.
Absolutely.
So when you made that mugshot public, now Trump can capitalize it and put it on T-shirts and mugs and posters, and now he's making buku money. So you can levy all the hundreds of millions you want. He'll pay it right back. You're not going to do a thing to him.
I just think that the irony on the mugshot is usually the shirts or the mugs is like never surrender, and it's like, well, he'll surrender himself in. But I mean, he's fighting it. But the mugshot is in itself a surrender, but it's,
No, that's where I get into it with Matt, because I think Matt holds him to a different standard, and when I look at the puke that is our government and politics, I'm looking at Trump going, sorry, he still does not equal their level of scum, no matter what you want to say about him in general. But again, at the end of the day, it does come back to that, sorry, wrong side, live free or die. Like, legitimately, like, I truly believe that humans are good people, and they will take care of each other. Trying to force them to take care of each other, forcing them through taxation to buy into political programs, I don't think that's the answer. I think encouraging really great individualism and letting people follow and chase their own dreams and their own potential with the faith that the vast majority of them will do the right thing and they will do right by their other human beings in civilization. I think every time government gets into the middle of that and tries to force people to do things, you have unintended consequences, and most of the time the intended consequences are not actually worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if we ever even, if it was a circle back or if it was just but these are like, it's perspective type issues of saying it doesn't matter what generation you're in. 98% of everything, all generations and all sides are capable of sitting down at a table and agreeing on. I do not understand why generations and political divides are allowed over 2%. That mentally, I can't bridge that gap. I don't understand how you can look at somebody as an enemy when you know that you agree with them on 98% of issues. That doesn't make any logical sense to me.
I think that's a perfect circle right back around to the difference between the generations. Your generation, anytime you had to look up information as a kid, it was, we'll go find the whole encyclopedia set and start flipping through some pages. And that's what I got to start with. And it's like, okay, you had to fight through that. And then I got the internet. And it's like, but then you get to Seth's generation. Nobody even had encyclopedias anymore. It was all instant right at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So I think people are, your generation's like, we're agreeing on 98%. What's the problem? And it's like, my side sees both. And it's like, the younger people are like, well, I want it to be this way and I want it to be that way now. I don't want to have to fight for it. I feel it. I want it. And I want it now.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, you know what? I'm gonna give you one better on this Gen Alpha, because people, like, if you haven't gotten there yet, you should, because it's what's going to happen. They circumcise you as a baby, fresh out of the womb. This generation is going to be born with implants, and they're going to be born with their own personal AI assistant from day one. And it won't be about information at your fingertips. It's going to be about you literally growing up as a toddler with your own AI assistant, teaching you language, teaching you school, and simply either verbally saying or thinking, and there will be no fingertips involved. That is the evolution that we're moving towards.
So what's kind of scary to me is like, Jason, you were, like you said, like Matt said, you were the generation, if you had to look something up, you went into an actual book, encyclopedia, dictionary, whatever, and you looked it up manually. And then, Matt, you started out that way, then you went to the internet. I had the internet since day one, but now, just one generation after me, I'm going to be antiquated. Because I actually had to go online and type into Google what I wanted, whereas Gen Alpha, they just go up to, basically HAL 9000, and they're like, hey, what should I do for this or that? And I'm just waiting for the day that some kid goes on like Microsoft, or like Microsoft's like, I think Copilot or like Chat GPT, whatever, and they're like, give me a chocolate chip cookie recipe or something like that. And the AI just responds, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't answer that.
That's funny, because we go to the other side of it where you think about Iron Man, and I'm like, we're going to get to that day and age where everybody's going to have their own Jarvis. But you're going to get to a point where the parent is going to choose the child's name and choose the AI assistant's name.
Yep.
At birth.
Yeah.
Because the parent will have a relationship with both of them.
Yeah. And of course, for me, I'm just going to call it Hal. the AI, I'm going to call it Hal. The funny thing is, because like AI is a big talking point even within Gen Z. And I make that joke about HAL 9000, and a lot of people my age look at me like, what? What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. What are you, Of course, my mother raised me on old movies. Like, not really old, but like, older movies that were way before my time.
Jason old is what you're talking about.
Yeah, me old. Yeah, no, that's
fine. Yeah.
I will not. I am not. Now, damn it, I'm not old. Albeit in 2 days, I turn 49. So and again, that's where I come back to that. I really did start going on my own personal health journey as I turned 40, and now as I'm starting to edge towards 50, I am thanking myself for starting that journey at 40. Mm-hmm. I have put many challenges in front of myself over the last decade, and mentally and physically I am feeling the benefits of it with a lot more confidence that I'm going to go into my 50s and I'm going to have a higher quality of life because of that. Be kind to your future self. Mm-hmm. Challenge yourself before that you're challenged. And I'm looking at your generation going, if you guys can nail it and get it right in your 20s, Your 30s and 40s can be beautiful. I mean,
Yes.
as opposed to me, and I'm like, I really didn't start turning that corner until I started getting into my 40s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like
All
that
right.
turn keeps happening later and later and later with each generation.
Well, you're right, and that's where I get into and I've talked about it many times, these fake ass jackholes that are on Instagram telling you about the get rich quick scheme and giving you the impression and painting a picture of what entrepreneurship is, when we all, real entrepreneurs, know that they're lying, know that whatever they're doing, they rented it and likely spent every last dime to make them look rich, when we all know that they're not. You're not doing your generation any favors. You might be getting attention, and this has definitely turned into an attention economy, but you're not doing yourself or your generation any favors by lying about the reality itself. And the reality is, it is an extended amount of effort over a long amount of time, and focused an extended amount of effort on something for an extended amount of time. Not chasing 10 different shiny things and being like, well, hey, I put my 5 years in. Well, you put your 5 years in going 5 different directions and wondering why none of them took off. I put 8 years into Coffee Junkies before I created Pizza Junkies. I put 8 years into Pizza Junkies and the combined Coffee Junkies before I ever started looking at making the ecosystem of brands that is under Double J Brands. I'm not going to deny, from day one I wanted to franchise, but I'm like, it took me 18 years to truly get to the point to say, I have a product and I have systems that are franchisable. And I'm not going to deny it, I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning that probably set me back a decade. That's part of what I'm trying to fit into my book. But it doesn't matter what age you are, you're kidding yourself if you don't realize that you're going to have to put 5 or 10 really hard years into something in order to actually get the result that you're looking for, to make sure that what you're seeing on Instagram, that you can truly achieve that it's not just fake ass shit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a trap a lot of young men my age are falling into, and I'm hoping to say to them, like, look, you need to put the time in, guys. You can't just have a quick fix.
No, and the thing is when you're young, that's where I come back to that. I did things when it's a hindsight being 2020 that I can look backwards now. I did things in just the wrong order. Mm-hmm. So I can literally tell you that the first thing that you focus on is personal development. Like, if you get personal development right, and you really start actively, purposely feeding yourself the right information, over a 2 to 5 year period, you lay the foundation for developing the mental and physical fortitude that it takes to actually take on a project where you build something on a foundation that is truly scalable, that will deliver you the result that you're after. I did it ass backwards, and I joke where I'm like, yeah, I've built a couple multi-million-dollar companies. The problem is they were the same damn company because I screwed it up so bad. I built it up to $1 million, but it was a house of cards. I didn't build it up with my own proper personal development, with a good mindset, with good foundations and business principles, and it all came crashing down. And then I literally had to sort through the rubble and pick out the lessons and then build it the right way in order for it to actually be self-sustaining, because that's the whole point. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm just going to run out and make 100K. Great. 100K is not going to last you the rest of your life. If you're going to build something that will sustain you for your entire life. And that takes an extended amount of effort, not just that. It's funny that with the internet has brought the same get rich quick schemes. They're just not happening in newspapers now. They're not happening on the phone now. They're happening on the internet. But it's the same damn
For everyone to see.
scheme.
Yep.
Yes.
The important thing is to be able to learn from the past without dwelling on the past.
Yes.
You have to be able to keep taking that step forward, putting in that effort every day.
Yep.
No disagreements there, because regret, there's nothing wrong with reflection, but you can literally find your way into depression through regret. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I mean,
No.
I think that's the biggest issue facing most of the people in the country because of social media. People are putting that fake image out there. It's like, man, if I would have just done that, I just would have done that. And it's like, stop. You're where you're at today. What can you do tomorrow?
and that right there, because it's like at any day you can choose to, you are a product today of choices that you made 3, 6, 9, 12 months, 24 months ago. So at any point you can stop and say, day one, everything resets. Today I'm going to start making good decisions. Today I'm going to start making rational choices. And you're not going to see results tomorrow, but you will in 3 months. You will in 6 months. You will in 9 and 12. And if you can do that and be the disciplined of, I'm going to make good decisions every time that they're set at my feet, then you'll get 2 years down the road and you'll be able to look back and be like, now I see the value in doing the hard thing in the moment rather than taking the quick, easy gratification in the moment and then wondering why tomorrow never seems to get better. And then we get to the other side of this, and this is what I really want to implore everybody. The destination don't mean shit. It is about the journey. Like, you need to truly enjoy the journey. Well, part of enjoying the journey is literally being mentally and physically healthy so that you can be present and enjoy the present moment of your actual journey. Because if you know it's going to be hard, well, then you don't fight it. You just put your head down and you do the hard thing, and it doesn't suck as much. Because you just got to get in the mindset that everything is hard. Choose your hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Before we wrap this up, do you have you got any subjects that you want to throw out there and touch on?
Well, let me look at my list here. Let me see if I can pick something out from this list. I think one thing that I want to touch on is, well, I am a Kokomo native, and I operate and live in Kokomo. And I want to just touch on the fact that I'm very happy and grateful that Kokomo has began to really embrace its writers. When I released From the Mountain in September last year, I made it a challenge to myself, like, I'm not just going to take the glory for myself, I'm also going to try and contact my fellow writers in the community and get them some exposure. So, we've done some poetry open mic nights here in Kokomo with the Poetry Society of Indiana. And actually, Jason, we did one at Pizza Junkies, which we were very grateful to do it there, and we had a good turnout. And it's been great. And there's so many good writers in Kokomo, and not just poets, but there's other writers, and I'm hoping to just really build Kokomo as a foundation for writers and being a writer hotspot in the Midwest, but also just an artist hotspot. And I feel like with the battery plants coming into Kokomo, that's going to lead to a lot more industry, but with that, a lot more commercial businesses that are going to come in. And so there's just so much opportunity in Kokomo that's going to be coming down the pipeline. And I hope it's not just for the writers and the artists, but for everyone. And, you know, my father, he died in 2014, but, you know, he kind of was dying. He died right around the time when Kokomo was having a hard time and some businesses were shutting down and all that. We were still trying to recover from '08. And he always said Kokomo's going to come back. And I feel like with these battery plants and with the potential opportunities that come with them, Kokomo will come back, and I'm doing everything in my power to play a part to make sure that happens. And I know Jason, you and Matt and everyone with Coffee and Pizza Junkies are doing that. And I'm just really proud to see how Kokomo has come together, not just for our writers, but as a community. And I'm excited for more. So that's all I have.
No, and I mean, I want to echo that across many fronts. One, I have nothing but love for Kokomo. Kokomo has supported me in my entrepreneurial journey. Moving with other operations outside of Kokomo, I will tell you, Kokomo truly supports small businesses like no other community that I have ever participated in. Kokomo supports small businesses. That is a moment of pride for me. Going back to my personal loyalty, because I've had this conversation with Matt, because I was born in Indianapolis and Matt still lives in Indianapolis, and it's like Indianapolis is a hub. And I am building my corporate headquarters in Kokomo out of my loyalty to Kokomo,
yes,
because of all of the grace and support Kokomo has shown me.
Yes.
That said, now I have the message that I hope a lot of people in Kokomo will hear out of me. I love Kokomo because the blue collar roots, that's my heart and soul. I am a blue jean entrepreneur. Those blue jeans are part of my manual labor, or early part of my career in life and working at Chrysler. Most blue collar glosses over the value of culture that the arts bring. And I really wish, I want Kokomo to broaden your mind, open up your perspective, realize the values that true arts and entertainment bring to the culture of a society, of a community, and embrace that in Kokomo, because it'll make Kokomo a more well-rounded community. We already know Kokomo is a community of industry, of manufacturing, of hardcore blue-collar labor. But if we have the ability to inject culture into that, it will be a better community. So that was why when you guys reached out, I was happy to do that at Pizza Junkies or at the Washington Street store. And I was very candid to say, poetry does not speak to me personally, but I respect the arts and I understand how it contributes to the culture of our society and the importance of it. So yes, I want to encourage you, like, all the love in the world for Kokomo. Open your heart and be more willing to embrace all of the arts, because it does contribute to culture.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Again, I think we did probably go all around the world on this, and I'm always if you know somebody that needs to hear it, please actually share the show. But yeah, I think I think this is a good stopping point. We're going to wrap up the pod. Seth, you want to tell everybody how to actually find you on social? Because I know you're on a couple platforms and you're putting content out there. How does people find you?
The best place is to go to my link tree. That will give like my Facebook, my Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, my website. But if you want to look me up on like Facebook or Instagram, just look up Seth the Mountain. It'll pop up with my logo with a red circle and the white mountain. And best places are Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter and YouTube. So.
All right, everybody, check out Seth the Mountain and take a look at his poetry with an open heart and an open mind.
Congrats on the first book, and you're a couple weeks away, but congrats on the second one coming out soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Brother, thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, until next time, you guys have a good night.
There was another generational divide there. Did you see that? Did you catch it? Jason Wade, we saluted out.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir.